Yusuf Maki was stabbed in the heart. After listening to 4 weeks of evidence and 6 hours of deliberations, a jury accepted the teenager who stabbed him was acting in self-defense. Another 17-year-old was cleared of lying to police. Yusuf's sister told me she wants a retrial.
It's like we're back to day one when he passed away. It feels like that again. That's how raw it is, how traumatising it is, and everyone's just confused, and everyone we've spoken to is confused. It's not just us. I've had millions of messages online as well, and I've been reading comments, and people are just outraged.
What message do you think it sends out to people?
Not a good message at all. Basically, that you can just be 17 and do these things and get away with them with no consequences at all. There was no remorse as well during the trial, no remorse from the boys, no apologies. We were not addressed at all.
The jury was told the stabbing was an accident waiting to happen. All three friends indulged in idiotic fantasies playing middle-class gangsters. The court heard the teenagers planned to rob a drug dealer, but it went wrong. Yusuf and one boy fled, leaving the other to take a beating. He later pushed Yusuf, who punched him in the face. He told the jury Yusuf pulled out a knife, and he responded by also taking out a knife and said his victim was accidentally stabbed.
What was he like to you?
A lovely brother and a really family-orientated person too. My mum has arthritis and he used to help her a lot. And all of us, I've got 3 children of my own, they all look up to him. He was their role model. My son is hoping to go to MGS next year at Manchester Grammar, and because he was his idol and he was his role model, and he's hoping he can live his legacy if he's not here to do so.
Do you recognise the person portrayed in certain elements of the court case?
No.
Both defendants were from wealthy Cheshire families. The verdict has raised questions over race and privilege in the criminal justice system.
We're not just going to let this go, definitely not, no. It just, for the example it sets as well, I've got 3 sons, so I won't be letting this go. We're going to go through every avenue that we can to fight this.
Both defendants will be sentenced next week for possession of the knives and one for perverting the course of justice. Yusuf's family hopes the judge will use the full weight of the law when deciding on their punishment.
You're watching Good Morning Britain. I'm sure you remember this. It was one of Britain's most shocking knife attacks. 17-year-old Jodie Tesney was chatting with her friends in a park at East London one evening in March when she was fatally stabbed.
Her family's life was turned upside down, but now they're working towards helping others and preventing knife crime by setting up a new charitable foundation in her name.
Jodie's father, Peter, joins us this morning for his first live broadcast interview. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us. Obviously, there's an active court case involved, so you have to be a little bit careful about what we say. We're all aware, aren't we, of the knife crime epidemic. We've all read the headlines. I imagine it never in your wildest dreams thought that it could happen to your family.
No. And you don't know how to react. It was just, it's such a shock. It is still such a shock. I don't know if I'll ever come to terms with what happened because of the way it happened. There's no real reason. There's no putting 2 and 2 together and saying, OK, well, I can kind of comprehend that. I want to come to terms with it. You can't, because it's just so random. And 1 minute, you know, if you'd have told me 4 months ago that this was going to happen, I'd be like, you know, you just can't ever foresee this thing happening. And when it does, you just have to deal with it. There's no manual that I can say to you, you know, this is how I did it, because I don't know.
No.
I still don't know. I'm just kind of going with emotions.
You've set up the foundation, the Jodie Chesney Foundation. What's the driver there for you? What would you like to try and achieve from the foundation and in her memory?
The object of it is to try and minimise this happening to somebody else, basically. Like, because Jodie was such a good, kind person, I want to obviously carry her name on as a legacy and carry on her kindness, right? And actually, my daughter said to me, my other daughter, Lucy, she said, if we can save 1 life by doing this with the Jodie Chesney Foundation, then it's all worth it. It's all about education. Our kind of mission is educate in order to prevent, right? So we want to kind of educate parents and carers as well as children about the consequences of even carrying a knife, let alone using it. And I'm just, you know, I'm a victim of this knife crime as well as everybody else. I mean, Jodie isn't suffering anymore. We are terribly, and I want to try and minimise or try and help the culture of knife crime, because it is a culture now, isn't it? Why is it okay to carry a knife and stab people? It just seems to be so flippant. When I don't remember it being as flippant as this when I was at school. I really don't. So it definitely seems to be getting worse. I know it's like a buzzword at the moment, knife crime, but it is a buzzword for a reason, isn't it?
So clearly you are going to be getting more information, and you're looking into this, and you've set up the foundation.
Yeah.
It wasn't there when you and I were growing up. What's changed, do you think, Peter? I mean, there's no simple solution, that's clear, but what has changed and what can we try and do?
I don't know. There's obviously going to be many variables of this. Could it be media? Could it be music? Could it be films? Could it be the internet? The reason people can release their own content now and just spread it freely, so you don't have to rely on, say, mainstream music and media. I'm not saying the media is the problem, but it could be a variable. But people can just do stuff from their bedroom now and release it. And maybe people are getting influenced by the wrong people. Maybe people are getting influenced by the streets. And it's just kind of snowballing. People think this is okay, when it really isn't.
No. You've met with Sadiq Khan and other politicians. Are you getting any answers from them?
Not really. I mean, I met with Sadiq Khan and Lib Peck, actually. Wonderful person, Lib Peck and Sadiq Khan. I'm not got any political agenda. You know, a lot of people got opinions on both of those, and they're just human beings. When I met them, wonderful, nice people. And but he said he was going to help us. He's going to support us with whatever strategies and incentives we drum up, which we're doing at the moment. We're sort of designing and developing some incentives, which is going to try and make a difference.
Now, so far this year, 46 people have been stabbed to death in London. It's a problem which the authorities are struggling to deal with.
The question is, how? Well, the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, is under pressure to deal with that knife crime crisis. He's received very public criticism, of course, from the US President Donald Trump. And today, Mr. Khan is announcing plans to keep young people away from violence during the summer holidays in particular. We can speak to him live now from our Westminster newsroom. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know you're going to be announcing some summer projects to keep kids off the streets and away from trouble during the holidays. I'm struggling to work out how much difference that can actually make, given the gravity and severity of the kind of knife crime, particularly epidemic we've seen.
Yeah, no, you're right to raise that. So we're publishing today the most comprehensive research ever done in London and probably around the country about the causes of the increase in serious youth violence. We've used data from a whole host of sources, including the police, British Transport Police, the NHS, the London Ambulance Service and others. And what this shows is the increase in serious youth violence in London started going up in 2012, but it's unarguable now. There is a link between serious youth violence and poverty, deprivation, children in care, inequality. So yes, it's really important that we continue to lobby the government to reverse the cuts in police numbers, and I welcome actually both Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt recognising that police cuts have gone too far. That's one half of the equation. The other half, which is equally important, is to stop the pipeline of young people getting involved in serious youth violence. That means investing in communities, addressing the issues of poverty, deprivation, inequality. So, for example, we know that a large number of young people below the age of 16 become the victims of serious youth violence between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. That's because after-school clubs have been closed down because of government cuts. We'll be investing from City Hall, not enough I accept, but as much as we can to make sure there are more facilities for young people to get busy between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. And you're right to remind the viewers that we've also announced plans for, in the summer, to keep young people busy. We know from previous years, when the weather's hot, when there's summer holidays, serious youth violence tends to go up.
It does seem to be a particular problem in London. Yes, there have been incidents in other cities, but I mean, London does seem to be getting a disproportionately large increase in violent crime, particularly knife crime. Do you take responsibility for some of that? You've blamed the government, you've blamed funding, but you're the Mayor of London. It's on your watch.
I take responsibility for what happens in London, but you're not quite accurate when you say it's gone up disproportionately higher in London. Actually, other parts of the country have seen far higher increases in serious youth violence and in violent crime. That's no excuse then in relation to what's happened in London. I do take responsibility for what happens in London. And what I'm saying today is we are doing the maximum we can from City Hall, but also we've brought together the NHS, probation, the police, local councils, community groups, charities, working together to try and grapple with this. But I'm asking the government to support us. Yes, I welcome the government recognising cuts in police numbers have gone too far, but work with us in relation to investing in public services and preventative services. So, for example, we know that when the police arrest a suspect for a homicide, that roughly speaking, more than 70% of those have previously been the victims of knife crime. So we're trying to have youth workers in A&Es and trauma centres paid for by City Hall to turn these young people around when they've been victims of knife crime. So we're doing these things from City Hall, but it's a fraction of the money that's been cut from central government. When you speak to council leaders around the country, including London, many of them have lost more than 60% of cuts in core funding. So they can't pay for youth centres, they can't pay for after-school clubs, they can't pay for summer schemes. So we'll do what we can from City Hall, and I accept responsibility and will do what I can, but we really need help from central government as well. Not just me in London, in Manchester, in Liverpool, in Bristol, in other parts of the country as well.
When you sit down with the next Prime Minister and say that's Boris Johnson at the cross of the table, he will look you in the eye and he'll say, well, when I was Mayor of London, crime came down, knife crime came down.
Yes
I
and
managed
no.
to control it.
No, yes and no. So knife crime did go down when there was a Labour government towards the beginning of Boris Johnson's mayoralty up until 2012. From 2012 onwards, Boris Johnson's second term, serious youth violence started going up. Violent crime started going up. The number of homicides started going up. Across the country, by the way, serious violence and violent crime started going up as well around 2014. In fact, it could be argued that the reduction in London during Boris Johnson's time was less than the reduction around the country. The point is, when violent crime started going down, when the government invested in making sure they were tough on the causes of violent crime, as well as being tough on violent crime as well, you've got to do both. So we've got to invest in the police. They're overstretched, under-resourced, working incredibly hard. We've lost more than 3,500 officers in London since Boris Johnson first became mayor, more than 3,500 community officers. But also we've lost huge sums of money in youth services, in after-school clubs, in mental health services. We've seen a massive increase in children being excluded from schools. We have children in care not receiving the support they need. And what the research today shows is it's unarguable now that if you're going to tackle the increase in serious youth violence, if you're going to tackle and stop violent crime forever, yes, we need tough enforcement, we need more police working incredibly hard, but also we've got to deal with root causes too.